Uh, Welcome to my channel. So today we will talk about the difference between instances and objects. So this is very confusing topic. Lots of people are confused. Even after reading the books, you won't get a, a complete answer that can remove that confusion from your mind. What's the difference between object and instance? So some people say an object uh, is actually a copy. An instance is a copy of an object. Some people say an instance refers to the memory area of the object. Okay, and all these things are right, but still we're confused, and we use these two words interchangeably. So we use the word instance most and object interchangeably. But they are two different things, and I will try to explain that today. So let's see how they are different. So basically, let's try to understand. So we have a class, and a class is actually a blueprint of an object, and we can have many objects of a class, right? So like we are humans, so we belong to human class. So human class is a blueprint. All humans are created based on that blueprint. Like we all have two hands. I mean, we have heard these examples, so I don't think I should go through it. And then we create an object of the class, right? So each object of the class has its own state and behavior defined in that class. So it is the behavior and the state uh, is based on the blueprint, but it's different than other objects. So we can also say that an object is actually a physical presence of the class in a memory, right? So why I'm saying that, if you look at here, so we have a class. So I will use Python to explain the difference between uh, an instance and an object. So if you look here, so we have a class. This is a blueprint. So this class is actually a blueprint. So we can't use this class until we create the object of the class. Like if we have a car class, so we can't use the car class if we don't create the object. Similarly, if we have a house class, so we can't live in the house or we can't use the house if we don't create the object of the class, right? So when we create the object of the class, so then it an object is created. A memory is reserved for that class. So when we say my class in Python and in bracket, I write if the class constructor takes any parameter, I pass that. Now basically we are creating the object, right? So before initializing the attributes of a class, we can say this is an object, right? So when we just create the object without initializing the attributes of the class, that would be called an object, right? So that's what we are saying here, that a class is a blueprint, and object is basically physical presence of the memory. So when we create the object, and that is basically at the time when we can use that class, right? So we can use the attributes, the state, and the operations of that class. So an instance is when we initialize the attributes of the class. So if we are initializing the attributes at the same time when we are creating the object, then this object would be an object as well as an instance. But if we are just creating the object, and it is possible, right? So you can do that, then it's just an object. It's not an instance. So instance would be when we will initialize the attributes, right? Then it will become an instance. So we can say that an object is actually an instance as well. We can say an object is also an instance, but an instance can't be an object. Like if we don't have, we haven't initialized the attribute, then uh, it's not an instance. It's just an object, right? But if we have initialized the attribute, then it's an object as well as the instance. So that's what that's the difference between a class and an object and an instance. So an instance is actually a unique copy of the object. So it has same structure and data, but different values though. So the structure is same. The structure of an instance is same as the object, but it has different values, different data, right? So same structure, different data, right? So we can have more than one instances of an object, right? More than one copies of an object. Okay, so like here, so we have a car, so we can't live in this car until we create the objects, right? So what we're saying is, see, if we have a class called car, and we have different types of cars, Audi, Nissan, Volvo, right? So they all have different attributes, different properties, and different operations. Like their speed is different, their shape is different, right? But I mean, and even at this point, you can't say they are instance. An instance would be when you will manufacture a car. When you will manufacture a car and you sell it, and someone is driving on the road that car, that would be the instance of Audi. And you know that we can have many Audi cars. We have many instances of this object. Similarly, we have a Nissan object, and then we can create many Nissan cars, and they are like instances of this Nissan object. Similarly, we have a Volvo car object, and then we can create many Volvo car objects, right? And we can sell them, and each object that is driven on the road is basically an instance of this Volvo object. That's the difference between an object and an instance. So what we're saying is object is a generic term, and instance, on the other hand, is a uniquely initialized copy of the object. You see here? So this is a generic object, but when we create a manufacture a car of Audi or Nissan or Volvo, that would be actually the instance. So instance is basically initialized copy of the object, right? So object becomes an instance when we initialize it. That's the difference. And I can prove that. I can prove that in Python, right? So let me show you practically how instance and objects are different from each other. So here we have a class. The class is called myClass, and in that class I've got two attributes, name and age. Then I've got one instance method. So the normal method in object-oriented programming is called instance method. So instance method takes the one, if it's not taking any other parameter in Python, it should take at least one parameter, self parameter. And if you don't know what self is and why we are writing self here, I have a different video where I've explained it in detail what is self, why we need to write first parameter as self, right? So a method in object-oriented programming in a class where the first parameter is self is called instance method. So this is an instance method. And then similarly, we can have class methods in a class as well. So a class method's first parameter is not an instance, is a class object, right? It's a class basically. So I'm not writing the class word. Why? Because class is used for another purpose. Class is used to create a class. So that's why we are writing it slightly differently, because class 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 is used by Python. So what I'm saying is, so we have two types of methods. One takes an instance and the other one takes a class, right? And that will explain the difference between object and an instance. Okay, so if I have an object, right? I can if I if I have an object, like in this case, in this class method, using that object, I can change the state of that class. When I say change the state of the class, it means I can add more attributes to it. For example, right now we have only two attributes in a class. So one is name and the other one is age. But what I can do, I can create one more attribute. So at the moment, let's change the structure of this. Let's change the structure of this. What's this called? Class. Okay, from within your class method. And why we can change it? Because here we have a class object, first parameter, and if we have an object, using that I can create another attribute, and the other attribute, let's say I'm saying, is location, right? So I have another attribute which is location. So I can assign it value. So the value can be anything. I can say the value is London, right? So now I will tell you that, I mean, if we have created another attribute of that class using this class parameter inside the class method, that would be not only available within this method, it will be available in every other method or in every other object of that class, right? So it means an object can change the state of a class. So right now, if you see, before calling that class method, okay, before calling that class method, if I would be saying, before calling the class method, if I would say print, and I would say obj, which is the name of the object, dot location, I will get an error because this attribute doesn't exist, right? If I run it, you see it says my class object has no attribute location. But if I print this statement, after running class method, like in this case, I'm using the class method to create another object, and I've explained it in another video that we can use class method as an alternate constructor. And if we can use it as an alternate constructor, it means we can use it to create the objects as well. So here, what I'm doing is I'm calling my class method using the class name. You see, class methods and static methods we can call using the class name. Look here. So what I'm saying is, if I'm calling this method, I can call that class method even using the first object also. But for this purpose, to get rid of some errors, what I can do, I can comment this last line, right? So what I'm doing now is I'm going to call class method now. So what I would say, Control V, and before printing it, I would say obj dot class method, and then I will pass name and the year, right? So name, I'm saying let's say any ABC, right? And the year is let's say 1999, right? Okay, now if I will run it, you will see I won't get an error, right? Because now this class method has created one more attribute, and now if I will try to print it, it will let me print that, right? So a class, because here I have a class object. Here I have say the first parameter is class basically, and using that I can change the state of the class. I can't do it using the instance. If I would try to say self dot let's say country, right? If I would say self dot country equals some values, and I will run it. Let's see what happens. It's not showing an error, but so now, like, this line is creating a new attribute, changing the state of the class. So we so but this line won't change the state of the class. Why? Because here we have an instance. We don't have access to the class or the object like here, right? So here, now if I will try to print country here, okay, it will show me an error. If I would say obj dot country, obj dot country, and run it, you will see I will get an error. Why? Because an instance can't change the state of the class. An instance is just the initialization of the object, right? So using the instances, I can't change the structure of the object, right? But if I'm using if I have access to the object, like in a class method, I can change the state of the class. I can add attributes to the class. So that's the difference between uh, an object and an instance. An instance just the initialization of an object. So we can't change the structure using that. But with your object, I can change the structure of your class, right? So like here, I have added more attributes. I can add more attributes as well. So if I create another object, let's say I'm creating another object, I'm saying obj1 equals and my class, and I will pass some values, name, I would say xyz, and I would say 2020. If I will run it now, it will create another object. And if I would say obj1 dot if I would say print, and then I would print obj1 dot what's it called, country, right? I will get an error, right? But if I would say obj1 dot location, I won't get an error. So I can comment this line, right? Because using the instances, you can't change the structure of the class. Now you see I'm not getting an error. So it is printing London twice, one because of this line number 24, and the other one is using this line number 27. So what I'm saying is, a class is a footprint, an object is basically the presence of the class in the memory, we can say, and instance is pointing to the memory, and we can also say an instance is actually the initialization of the object, right? So when we initialize the values, okay, of the attributes of a class, that becomes an instance, right? And I show you that we have two types of methods in Python. One is instance and the other one is class. And in instance method, we pass a self, which is an instance, and in class method we pass CLS. Using this instance, I can't change the structure of that class, right? But using this object, I can change the structure of the class, and that's the difference between the instance and the object, because instance is just one copy, yeah, right? So an object is actually a structure, right? That's all it is basically. So you will get lots of other explanation, but I think this is the best explanation that anyone can give. I hope you will like it. Do subscribe to my channel. Take care. Bye.